So yesterday we looked at some of the failures of the Clinton presidency, and so today we're going to look at some of their policy successes, transition into some foreign policy for Clinton, and then also talk about the scandal that would forever dominate our basic opinions of his administration. So, foreign policy successes for Bill Clinton. Welfare reform was a big success. As a compromise between Clinton and House Republicans, the Clintons or Clinton established a series of work requirements for welfare recipients, which significantly cut down on the number of people who were taking welfare benefits. Some of them because, of course, they would then went and got jobs, but also the booming economy led to more people to move naturally off of welfare. So welfare enrollment declined significantly, both overall for individuals, for families, and for children. So that was a huge victory. The North American Free Trade Association is a free trade agreement between Canada, Mexico, and the United States, which eliminated some of the barriers to doing business across international borders. Uh, Today, NAFTA is somewhat controversial, but most economists would argue that free trade is beneficial for most people. Although some jobs, of course, do get outsourced, and specifically, manufacturing jobs tend to get outsourced with free trade agreements. In general, cheaper products for most people lead to wider benefits and more economic growth for people in all of the countries who were a part of NAFTA, to the point where when President Trump recently renegotiated the NAFTA agreement, it really wasn't a massive overhaul. There were just some very small tweaks in the agreement, despite what the rhetoric and propaganda said. So we do see some decrease in in American employment because of NAFTA, but most of these declines are based on economic crises, not necessarily free trade policies. You see, in the years after NAFTA, we see a significant increase in American employment, both domestically and abroad. So, but outsourcing does hurt people, and we do get, especially start as technology increases and the internet becomes more ubiquitous, which we'll talk about more later. We do see some outsourcing of white collar jobs as well, which is very problematic for for the individuals, of course, who lose those jobs. As far as foreign policy goes, the Clintons were the Clinton years were sort of a mixed bag. Uh, Obviously, our relationship with Russia got much better. Here is Bill Clinton laughing it up with Boris Yeltsin. So the relationship with Russia improved significantly after the collapse of the Soviet Union. So that was a huge victory. We started to intervene in sort of smaller interventions as opposed to sending in large numbers of troops. The Clinton years were sort of defined by more precision strikes with both special ops teams, cruise missiles, and of course, high altitude stealth bombers. So the Clinton years allow us to project our power much more specifically using high tech tools and highly trained soldiers and teams. The biggest failure of this policy was in Africa. A series of things made our Africa policy kind of fall apart. The famine in Somalia led the UN and the United States to send in large amounts of aid, which was then being seized by warlords and I mean warlords who were mostly associated with the drug trade. And so, in order to try to allow this aid to go to the people, the Clinton bill sent in a special ops team to try to capture one of these warlords. And in the city of Mogadishu, a Black Hawk helicopter was shot down, leading to the running Battle of Mogadishu, which was just a disaster, both for the United States, because of course several of our soldiers were killed, but also for the citizens of Mogadishu, where the death toll was significantly higher. So the Black Hawk incident was one of the things that led the United States to not get involved in the whole Rwandan genocide thing, which led to almost a million people being killed over former issues involving both colonialism and sort of tribal animosity. So the Rwanda genocide, we did not intervene quickly, and a ton of people died. And so the Clintons' Africa policy was pretty ineffective, to say the least. In the Balkans, it was somewhat more effective. The Balkans, of course, are the area around the former Yugoslavia, which broke up in the aftermath of the Cold War with the collapse of the communist bloc. Obviously, the collapse of any country is going to lead to a series of problems, but there was ethnic cleansing taking place in Bosnia, specifically around Sarajevo, because, of course, of the diverse array of ethnic groups in the former Yugoslavia in the Balkans. And so we don't need. I don't think you really need to know Slobodan Milosevic, but he was one of. He was a Serbian leader who ended up who was a former president of Yugoslavia, and he and a number of his top generals were ethnically cleansing Bosnian Muslims. And NATO got involved and launched both air and ground strikes in order to basically drive Serbian forces out of Bosnia. And so that's in general seen as a success, although a lot of Bosnians were still killed. And in the Middle East, it's also a mixed bag with Clinton. We get the first ever real meeting between the Palestinian Liberation Organization, or the PLO. This is Yasser Arafat here, who is the leader of the PLO. This is the first ever meeting between the PLO and Israel. And although they're not able to actually sign a peace agreement, the fact that they are now sitting down and talking was seen as a step forward. So peace in the Middle East remains elusive, but there's some positives to look at there. For the election of 1996, Clinton is of course going to be the Democratic nominee again, and he's running again somewhat on the strength of the economy and some of the success, and of course the fallout from the Republican government shutdown in 1995. The Republicans nominate Bob Dole of Kansas, who was a less than inspiring candidate who tended to refer to himself in the third person. And yeah, Bob Dole didn't really inspire most people. Plus, the thing that really sunk Bob Dole is Ross Perot jumps back in the race again. And so in 96, Ross Perot again runs for president, here apparently comparing himself to Harry Truman's comeback victory in 48. And so again, Ross Perot plays a spoiler effect, gets 8 million votes, nowhere close, wins 0 states, of course, gets 8 million votes, and most of them from Bob Dole. And so Clinton, despite again not having a majority of the popular vote, wins a majority of the electoral vote, and we get another 4 years of William Jefferson Clinton. The late 90s are mostly defined by the economic explosion created by the incredible amount of technological growth in the late 1990s. Obviously, computers have been around for a while, but they're getting much more sophisticated. And of course, the growth of the internet, which of course you guys have never known a world without the internet. But there used to be a time when if you didn't have information printed on a book in your house, you had to have to like physically go to the library and search for stuff. Like you could have questions that you could not find answers to, which was really, really crazy. Also, so the internet had been around for a while, but the internet becomes more accessible to the average person with the creation of a web browser and a search engine, which allows a portal for you to view information on the internet and to aggregate and find that information. Before Google became ubiquitous, there were a variety of different search engines, and you could theoretically get very different results depending on where you were typing your question or your keywords into. But this is where the internet starts to become something like it is today, although it was incredibly slow. This was dial up internet service where you had to dial in through the phone line. Very few people had broadband at this point, but it was a huge step forward considering before this there was simply no effective way for the average person to connect to other computers. So this leads to the birth of tech companies, internet content providers, all the things that we know about today. And so we see a significant increase in the valuation of these tech companies, creating something called the dot com bubble, where people were paying massive amounts of money or a lot of these companies were going public, and then a lot of these companies were going public. People were investing huge amounts of money in them, despite the fact that there wasn't a clear revenue stream there. To some degree, it's like something like Snapchat going public and being valued at billions of dollars, despite the fact that there's not necessarily a clear revenue stream as far as how Snapchat is going to get you to give them your money. Unless you really, really want to pay for those very fancy filters. So we get a speculative bubble, and of course, eventually that's going to burst, but not during Clinton's term. So we see a huge jump in the value of these tech companies and these internet providers like America Online, which literally used to send people CDs through the mail, which gave you a specific number of hours of internet access for free. It was weird. Because of this, of course, the stock market is going to grow significantly and the economy is going to grow. And so we're going to see this is growth, domestic product growth. And throughout the Clinton years, we didn't have any quarters of negative growth. So the economy grew steadily throughout the 8 years of Clinton's term, which of course made him very popular, and is one of the factors that allowed Clinton to balance the budget and actually start paying down the national debt, which is the last time that that's happened. The last time that that's happened, quite frankly, because we're clearly not doing it now, and it's very unlikely that we're going to be doing it in the foreseeable future. So, but the thing that most defined Bill Clinton was, of course, the sex scandal. So I'm going to give you a brief overview of that, and then we're going to get out. So, the sex scandal, as part of the ongoing investigations into the whole Whitewater thing and other investigations into Clinton, what we ended up getting was it was uncovered that Clinton had an inappropriate relationship with a White House intern named Monica Lewinsky. You see them pictured here. Clinton then went on television and went before Congress and made some statements about this that were probably not true. To get into how arcane this is, the definition of what sexual relations are got into it, factored into this whole controversy. And Clinton once said, it depends on what the definition of is. So Clinton made some misleading, if not directly false statements. And this led to his, and then of course, more stories of sexual harassment came out over this whole deal. The Paula Jones case, and then there was Jennifer Flowers. And Bill Clinton ended up getting impeached for both theoretically obstructing the investigation and then also for lying to Congress. So Clinton impeached by the House of Representatives, which was of course controlled by Republicans at the time. Uh, one of the best pictures of Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton. Here's Bill Clinton's apology face, which he got very very good at. If you don't, I probably can't post it, but you should 100% go on and Google some of the Saturday Night Live skits about this because they are absolutely brilliant. But despite the impeachment from the House of Representatives, the Senate acquits him on all of the charges, and Clinton's popularity continues to rise. It's viewed in general as a political attack by Republicans, and the scandal didn't really hurt Clinton's popularity. And for the most part, Clinton was able to ignore the scandal and continue to govern effectively throughout this time period. So that's Bill Clinton, and it brings us up to the terrifying year 2000, where we'll pick up our story tomorrow. Because, of course, Clinton's had his two terms, and so he can't run for re election. And so in 2000, we're going to get wholly new candidates. Yeah, kind of.